Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 18 Draft Recap. I'm your host, IllLogic. I'm the coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant. I'm joined by my co-host, SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
And we're here to break down what happened in the draft for Season 18. Steve, we've kind of gotten into a rhythm as to how we are doing our drafts per year, per calendar year, and it looks like we're back to a regular singles draft. Why don't you take us through some of the rules here, what we're going to be looking at here as we go through all of the team's drafts for Season 18.
Yep, as you mentioned, it is a singles draft league. We did open up some different options we've done before, allowed coaches to choose how many months they wanted on their team between 9 and 11, and could just bow out of the draft after they had, 10 to 12, and could bow out of the draft after their 10th mon. So we'll see how, if people preferred, a smaller team of better mons or a larger team of worse mons. Additionally, we have a unique Tera captain rule for this, where to make anything a Tera captain, it just costs 1 point from your normal draft pool. So again, kind of costing you those drafting resources to make your team a little bit better. There were some exceptions, case by case, especially towards the higher tiers, for certain mons that cost 2 points, a very select few that cost 3, and one little turtle that is not allowed to Tera because, of course. But yeah, otherwise, it's a fairly standard draft. We have 12 teams participating, a little bit on the lower side from what we've been seeing, but it's a really high level. So we're excited to see how these 12 teams turn out.
Yeah, you're definitely speaking the truth there, and you say a high level. The competition level has risen tremendously over the past few seasons. Even with only 12 coaches, it's going to be great. We saw two first-time finalists just last season in Season 17. They're both back. We've got our top three. We've got a ton of staples from the league going through here for Season 18, trying to capture the crown here. So let's get to it and take a look at who had the first overall pick. And with the first overall pick for Season 18, it is the Cincinnati Incineroar back again, looking for that comeback season. And big surprise, first overall, it is going to be Dragapult, followed up by Greninja, Landorus Incarnate, Withseer Force, Volcarona, Kingambit, Fortress, Serena, Doxbun, Ampharos, and the Marshtomp. Surely one of the weirder picks we'll see here, I'm sure. But really, the story of this team, look at those Tera captains. It's those top five. It's Dragapult, Greninja, Landorus, Volcarona, and Kingambit. Oh, just Dragapult, Volcarona, Kingambit alone, being able to Tera is... Oh, man, I'm going to throw up. Steve, talk to us about the typings and stats for this team.
Yeah, so taking a look at this team, you do see quite a few speedy threats. From this, of course, the team is top 3 overall in the average speed. Also, very much helped out by the Kingambit and Fortress, top 3 in defense. So having some overall decent stats there. On the special side, a little bit lacking. Volcarona really going to have to carry the special defense side of things. Overall, bottom 3 and special defense. Just as a general note, I'll mention it just this one time. For the stats, I'm looking at weighted stats, not necessarily the raw addition. So things like Dragapult, very high tier mon, a Tera captain is going to be weighted a lot more heavily than, as much as it pains me to say, Marshtomp and Ampharos. So not too worried about that. So with that in mind, going on then to just the speed overall, the team does have a fairly decent range, up from Dragapult's 142 down to Fortress's 40. Covers a great speed range there. Although there are gaps, especially on the high side. Dragapult's 142 to Greninja's 122 isn't that much of an issue, but then the gap down from Greninja to Landorus Incarnate at 101 could be a little bit of a concern. That is, a little sweet spot for the faster threats. So a lot of mons in that range might be able to choose to go with a offensive nature or defensive nature and still be able to outpace the Landorus. Also on the lower side, there are, again, some gaps from Dashbun's 95 to Serena's 72 to Ampharos's 55. So really a bunch of gaps all over, a lot of opportunities for teams to not need speed-boosting natures to outspeed certain threats, but we'll see if they come up. Taking an overall look at the typing, the team does have the best in-league matchup against normal, poison, and psychic. So those types are not going to do quite as well against this team, as well as top 3 against electric and steel. Some types to try and look to use against them, especially if you're trying to spam a stab move. They have bottom 3 matchup against rock and water, so this team will be one of your better opportunities to use those types. But yeah, overall, the team's got some great offensive threats. Nate, you mentioned especially the Tera captains. Dragapult's always great. Great selection of top mons with some supporting members at the bottom to hopefully check certain threats, and certainly looking like a dangerous team.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Whenever we look at a couple of the key to move pool selections here. Definitely looking at something like hazards for a lot of these teams. The Greninja and Fortress definitely stand out with being able to provide a variety of hazards, along with the Landorus King Gambit, and of course Marshtomp every time it comes, able to provide a wide suite of hazards there, particularly though from the Gren and Fortress, as well as I think another standout from this team, a lot of momentum. Each of those top 4 mons with an easy pivoting U-turn, as well as Volt Switch from a couple mons and the Serena there too with the U-turn. So a lot of ability to move around and reposition themselves. But the story of the team is most certainly those top 5 mons, and it sure seems like a big drop off there. It seems like a pick your 6th mon from week to week here between probably the Fortress, Serena, and maybe there's some matchup where Darkspin or Empress will be able to come. Really would love to see how well he can do to break teams down with the top mons and be able to clean up with another one, knowing that he can't really rely on those mid tiers all that much. Fortress down, I'm not sure how much they're going to do for you. Fortress, for example, a good mon, don't know if that's a come every week mon. Serena, about the same thing. I don't know if their roles are varied enough to be able to bring them separately and have to be able to do things. It doesn't seem like you can really mix and match all that well with the bottom tiers, but maybe there's something there for sure. And hey, those top tiers are good enough to potentially carry the season for the Incineroar here. Not looking forward to having to prep for all those monsters. Imagine one of them doesn't even come. Oh boy. Well, that's going to be the top overall pick, so let's check out who got number 2. And with the number 2 pick, it's Greg and the Calgary Corviknights coming back, trying to get that elusive playoff victory, and they're going to do so with the second pick, trying to help counteract the first overall pick. You already know Chen Pao is the number 2 overall pick, followed up by Iron Moth, the Dragonite, Slowking, Grimmsnarl, Decidueye, Hisui, Registeel, Mismagius, Toedscruel, and the Zebstrika there at the bottom, with 3 Tera captains being those top 3 bonds. Once again, we're just looking at the top of the drafts here from Tera's coming out so far. It's Chen Pao, Iron Moth, and Dragonite, all excellent choices for Tera captains. Steve, tell us about the typings and stats.
Yeah, so starting off with the stats here for Calgary, they do have the best weighted average special defense in the league, really helped out, of course, by those top tiers, Iron Moth, Dragonite, Slowking, all with good to reasonable special defenses, and even their low tiers contributing, Registeel and Toedscruel. However, the team does pay for that incredible special defense with the bottom 1 defense in the league. Registeel, of course, being a fantastic defensive piece, but outside of that, there's really nothing. Of course, with investment, anything can work, but something the team will have to look out for. Taking a look at the speed, they have a reasonable overall range, a pretty good range, from Qian Pao's 135 to Slowking's 30. Of course, there are gaps, especially when you're going up to 135, and there's a gap between Qian Pao's 135 down to Zebstrika's 116, as well as gaps between Toedscruel's 100 to Dragonite's 80 to Grimmsnarl and Decidueye Hisui's 60. And at the bottom tier, Registeel's 50 to Slowking's 30, although I'm not very concerned about the 50 to 30. Overall, some decent speed gaps that teams could take advantage of and get some boosting natures in there instead of needing to go with that speed boosting to get the jump. Taking a look at the typing, the team does have a top 3 matchup against Grass, Psychic, and Water, while having a bottom 3 type matchup against Electric, Fairy, Fire, Flying, Poison, Rock, and Steel. Very importantly with that Rock, of course, is those first 3 picks all being Rock weak, big setup sweepers. Something the team will really need to watch out for is Stealth Rock, especially as Qian Pao, Iron Moth, and Dragonite all don't want to have to wear boots. They, of course, can, but something the team will have to look out for. And the team is going to live or die by those top 3 threats, especially. They do have, of course, those support pieces, especially the Slowking is a reasonable support piece, as well as the lower tiers. But those top 3, the Tera captains, all of them able to put in tremendous work and sweep in the right situations, and something that other coaches are definitely going to have to watch out for.
Absolutely, and as far as the support for that goes, about middle of the pack or so for pivoting. I see half of the team here able to pivot. Probably the Slowking is a pretty notable piece there for being able to slow chili reception out, be able to provide some snow support for the Chen Pao notably, as well as the Grimmsnarl. They're able to set up some screens and parting shot around a couple other U-turn options there too. Iron Moth, if you really want to be able to do that. Volt Switch from the Zebstrika, U-turn from the Decidueye. Of note too, though, while we saw the Incineroar have a couple of really solid rapid spinners, here we've got the Toedscruel and the Decidueye clicking Defog, which is not that great of support here for all those rock weaknesses that you had pointed out previously. Not that great, and not much hazards, not much in the way of regular hazards either. Registeel going to be able to set up Stealth Rock, but that's about it. Got spikes from Toad Scroll and T spikes from the Iron Moth, but only one regular or Stealth Rocker is a little tough here. Definitely looks like compared to the Incineroar, going to need a little bit more heavy lifting from those mid tiers. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get that all that well. Hope we can see some creativity from something like the Grimmsnarl, be able to have that show up as a bit of a threat, and maybe be able to have that take some of the burden off of those top tier mons. But oh boy, it's a little bit tough having to rely on all those top three with so many, as you mentioned before, a lot of common weaknesses there, a lot of weakness to rock, a lot of weakness to just physical attacks in general overall for this team. Maybe a little tough here. But if they can put it together, maybe it'll be a lot about positioning for the Corviknight here. But I trust Greg, at the very least, in the regular season to make things work. Let's move on to the third pick. With the third overall pick, no surprise, the Newport Noctels, coached by Jimmy, are going to be grabbing that Palafin, and of course making that a Tera captain. That is, oh boy, have newly released into our league again from the Banhammer. And he's going to follow that up with Terapagos, Meowscarada, Heatran, Clefable, Espeon, Flygon, Vikavolt, Girder, Swalot, and Misdreavus, going with 11 mons this time, as opposed to 10 like we've seen the other two coaches do. And of course, joining Palafin as Tera captains, Espeon, Flygon, and Vikavolt. A bit surprising to me not to see Heatran there as an option, but we already know how much the Noctels enjoy using Heatran and have done a very good job pivoting around with that mon anyways. So Steve, tell us about some of the stats and typings.
Yeah, so starting off with the base stats, the team is top 3 in the average weighted special attack, so pretty good there. Really helped out, of course, by Heatran, and then some of those low tiers, Espeon, Vikavolt, really contributing, and the other top tiers not being terrible in it certainly helps. And in terms of base stats, that's really it. That's significant. They're towards the middle of the pack and everything, but it really shines in other areas. The speed range is from Meowscarada's 123 to Girder's 40. Fantastic range there. There are some gaps from Palafin and Flygon's 100 to Terapagos and Misdreavus's 85, from Heatran 77 to Clefable 65, and from Swalot's 55 to Vikavolt's 43. Again, some decent opportunities. These speed gaps are, of course, very small gaps. It's basically 1 or 2 speed stats that are going to be able to not need the speed boosting nature. So reasonable enough here. There are some gaps as well as some doubling up, but it certainly will work. Taking a look at the typing, very notably, there is only a single resist to flying in the form of that Heatran, so flying is something the team will have to look out for. Otherwise, the team has the best in the league matchup against Ice and the top 3 matchup against Fire and Ghost, so types to watch out for, to try and not bring against them. And team types to look at: bottom 3 against Bug, Normal, Poison, and bottom 1 against Fighting and Grass. So definitely some opportunities there. Bring your grass types. I'm sure Heatran would love it. But yeah, I know during the draft when we saw this team come together, it was highlighted by that Fire, Water, Grass core in those top tiers. Palafin, Meowscarada, Heatran, very dangerous. Supported, of course, by Terapagos' ability to set up and sweep, and a rapid spin option there. Fantastic. And then picked up some pieces later in the draft. Clefable especially stands out as another higher tier option that is a fantastic piece that it just seems so boring, but seeing Jimmy get it just makes me so upset because it's going to be so good for him. But yeah, fantastic team. Excited to see what he's able to do, especially picking up that 11th round Misdreavus. See if that's able to put in some work.
Absolutely, and hey, that Clefable, along with some of those bottom tiers, really nice fighting resist there to be able to stack up some options to be able to get those fighting resists in. Look at those top 4, who fighting would not have been a good time had it not been for the Clefable, Swalot, Vikavolt, and Misdreavus there at the bottom. In terms of pivoting, it's all right. I see a flip turn from Palafin, a couple of U-turns there from the Meowscarada, Flygon, Volt Switch, and maybe a couple of Baton Pass opportunities too. Could be pretty interesting. But I do also trust Noctels to make a lot of good hard switches there as well. Some decent hazard options. Terapagos is going to have great hazard control there. We've got the Sticky Web option from Vikavolt, which we love to see. Clefable, always a reliable rocker there. And of course, Magic Bounce from Espeon, pretty interesting there. And also probably a very underrated Tera Captain for the amount of points that it cost. That, along with the Flygon and Vikavolt there, down there at the bottom, pretty interesting. Yeah, you nailed it. As we saw the team come together after probably about the Heat Train pick, we kind of saw that come as, oh man, we just let Jimmy get Heat Train? Yes, we sure did. And now look what the team has become. Just pretty monstrous there. I wonder how much you'll be able to play around with his bottom tiers. If there's anyone that I trust to make Girder, Swalot, and Mischievous work there at the bottom, it's probably the Noctows. But then we're also giving him all these other tools like Palafin, the Terapagos, which we've seen do a decent bit in the league, but not all that much yet. Vikavolt, oh my beloved. There are a lot of great toys for him to play with here for sure. I expect big things once again from the Noctowls, and maybe once again that Misdrevious in the 11th round. Actually, notably, the only team to take 11 Mons in the draft, so we'll see if maybe that extra pick will amount to something here. Don't sleep on the Misdrevious. Wish that could have had a Tera option on that too. Would have been pretty neat. But with that, we've got to move on to the number 4 pick in the draft. With the 4th pick, it's Joe 8 and the Akron Agrons coming back with the Roaring Moon pick in the first round, followed up by Ogerpon, Cornerstone, Skeledirge, Empoleon, Gliscor, Braviary, Hisui, Cryogonal, Tauros, Aquaform, Blissey, and Whimsicott, with the Terra Captains being Roaring Moon, Ogerpon, Cornerstone, Skeledirge, and Gliscor. Steve, this looks like a pretty different team from the other ones that we've seen so far. A lot of defensive pieces here. That makes it for a very scary matchup in maybe a very different way, and that may reflect in the stats and typings as well.
Yeah, starting off with the base stats, the team does have the highest weighted average HP. Certainly helped, of course, by that Blissey and all the HP it brings, but also a lot of the other mons on the team bring a lot of HP. Notably, Roaring Moon, Skeledirge, and Braviary all above 100, so lots of help there. Blissey does come with some consequences, of course. The team is bottom 3 in terms of defense and attack. Certainly not helped out by the Blissey. They do have some wonderful attack pieces, especially the Roaring Moon and the Ogre Pond. But after that, it kind of falls off. The Tauros is reasonable, but nothing else breaks 100, so a little low there. And the team is bottom 1 in special attack weighted. Highest special attack, of course, is the Braviary Hisui at 112. That certainly will feel a little bit higher with Tinted Lens or Sheer Force, but something to keep your eyes on. In terms of speed, they have a range from Roaring Moon's 119 to Blissey's 55. We're getting a little narrower from the other teams, not quite cracking 120, but close enough. There is just a single speed gap, but it's quite a big one from Gliscor's 95 to Skeledirge's 66. Quite a big gap right there, and a sweet spot, especially for those kind of mons that are not sure if they're going to invest in speed or not. Well, I can tell you against this team, they are certainly not, as they just have to outpace the Skeledirge. Taking a look at typing, the team just has a single resist to flying in the Empoleon, so flying, again, a quite spammable move. The team does have a top 3 matchup against ground and normal, bottom 3 matchup against dragon, fighting, and grass, and a bottom 1 matchup in the league against ice and steel. So bring your ice and steel types. One note about this team is the team is a lot more balanced than a lot of the other teams, especially, Roaring Moon in the first round, only 16 when there was, up to some 18-point mons. And then Cryogonal at the end, or not at the end, but being the lowest mon they drafted at 6. A, very tight range with all the mons being, viable any given week. Of course, you're still going to favor some of the higher tiered ones, but you really can't, you're not sure what's going to go. You have to prepare for all 10, and we'll see if that is able to help the Agrons as they use these pieces to try and get another one.
Yeah, absolutely, and that tight range also can help in a couple other different ways. You mentioned that ice and steel. This is maybe one of the better matchups to bring those typings. And you think, oh look, I can bring that ice typing to hit the Gliscor, but oh boy, there are a couple other very thick defensive pieces in Skeledirge and Empoleon that really do not care about those ice moves. Right? They're just very difficult to find something very spammable. Going to need the correct combination of typings. And it takes probably some smart Terras to get around them. And hey, even then, Skeledirge, Gliscor with their own Terra options as well is pretty tough. We've got a little bit of momentum, not all that much though. The Mons with wings, they're able to U-turn around, with the exception of the Empoleon there. A couple of Rockers got the Empoleon able to set them up, as well as Gliscor, as well as Blissey as well. A couple of Spikers with the Gliscor and the Ogerpon there. The hazard control, not the best. We got the Cryogonal, we've got the Hisui and Braviary. It's a couple options. It's something there. We know that it's the Agron's turn to have Cryogonal. Only a couple of teams seem to favor it, and they really have teams seem to favor it just about every other season, it feels like. Very interesting team. Definitely tight, as you say. Just being able to see some of those mons in the later rounds. So don't be sleeping on the Whimsicott even in their final round selection. Actually, pretty solid. They're the Tauros in round 8. Some of those mons can come just about any week, which is neat. But you also need to make sure, if you're the Agrons, that you have your defensive core tightened while still being able to threaten well enough too, which is kind of interesting. I think, as you mentioned, a big weakness that special attacking is a little tough there. Aside from maybe Torch Song boosting itself up, there's not that much to be scared of on the special attacking front. Maybe just have something is somewhat bulky that can resist fire, and maybe you're okay there with getting away with special defense. And it feels like with a lot of these defensive pieces, you might just be playing on a different axis of game, anyways, trying to chip away at a lot of these mons and take out one piece and see if you can make the rest crumble. So it'll be potentially pretty difficult for the Agrons, but I know that they will enjoy using this type of team as well. I'll be able to see all these different mons synergize together here. We'll see what they come up with as we move on to the number 5 pick of the draft. And with the 5th pick, would you look at that? It's my own Buffalo Bouffalant, finally able to grab my favorite Gen 9 mon, Great Tusk, in the first round, following that up with Raging Bolt, Screamtail, got some prehistoric mods there, followed up with Scizor, Porygon 2, Ogerpon Wellspring in round 6, how'd y'all let that happen? Revavroom, Rotom Fan, Charizard, and Trapinch, with 6 Tera captains, tied for the most here, with Raging Bolt, Scizor, Porygon 2, Ogerpon Wellspring, Revavroom, and Rotom Fan, all able to Tera. Steve, got a couple of interesting little themes going on here. Got the prehistoric potential of photosynthesis core at the top there. Got a lot of interesting pieces here from the newest gen, as well as I guess a couple of interesting Gen 2 months there. How does all this come together in terms of stats and typings?
Well, with especially some of those top tier mons, it should be no surprise that the team is top 3 in terms of HP and defense. Really helped out, especially by that Great Tusk, and HP really helped by the Raging Bolt and Screamtail. Yeah, overall, a physically bulky team, something that'll be difficult to get through. That does come with a cost, though. Bottom 3 in terms of special attack, special defense, and speed. Further on that speed, the range is from Screamtail's 111 to Trapinch's 10. Screamtail, of course, being the fastest at 110 is a little bit concerning. The team is slightly on the slower side, something to watch out for in those upper speeds. There is, of course, a speed gap here from Porygon 2 60 to Trapinch's 10, but I'm not especially worried about that, partly because I think in order to take Trapinch, you're definitely going to have some sort of speed gap down to it. There's not many ways to bridge your way down to 10. Taking a look at the typing, the team has a single resist to Dark and Ghost, so those could be some very effective types to spam into the matchup. Types you don't want to look at, the team has the best in league matchup against Steel, as well as top 3 matchups against Dragon, Electric, Fairy, and Rock, with a bottom 3 matchup against Ice, Normal, Psychic, and the worst in league matchup to Fire. Certainly not helped by that Scizor. But yeah, overall, fantastic team. You mentioned the Sun core, of course, also Charizard part of that is too. Really can take advantage of the Sun, whether they set it manually or their opponent sets it up for them. Weren't able to grab a setter, of course. But I think this team's really going to live or die by those mid-tier Tera captains. They are certainly all versatile pieces, especially the Porygon 2, the Revavroom, the Rotom Fan. All of those having the option to Tera can, turn them into a deadly sweeper in one game or just a support piece the next. Of course, you do have those, other Tera captains that are, you certainly expect to Tera more, but the possibility of all those other mons could be quite scary. And I'm sure that's what you were going for, Nate.
Absolutely was. We see a lot of pivoting around to be able to help support that. A couple of Volt Switchers, a couple of U-turners, even the parting shot from Revavroom there. Decent hazards to play here. We've got, of course, Great Tusk as a very reliable remover, along with the Scizor, and a little bit of play here with a few different types of hazards. The Screamtail and the Great Tusk able to set rocks pretty consistently. Spikes from Ogerpon, toxic spikes in the Revavroom. I think definitely the strength is the versatility in a lot of these mons, right? There are a lot of these mons that can play sweeper and can play support from one week to the next. You can have an offensive Porygon 2. You could have a pivoting around Revavroom. A lot of different things we can do with that. Who knows? Choice Scarf Rotom Fan can take out a Chenpao. Not that you would know anything about that. Yes, I think it will be very much on trying to take advantage of the sheer amount of options that are here available to the Bouffalant. A lot of different Tera options could be used offensively, defensively, a lot of different sets here. see if I can make the time to make use of those in prep. I think that's playing to my strengths. Here's hoping it does. Hopefully that speed, as you mentioned, isn't too much of an issue either. And hey, I'm here to see Trap Inch go off, so that should be fun. Let's move on to the number 6 pick overall. And rounding out the top half of the first round, it's your Waterdeep Wobbuffets, Steve, followed off by the Tornadus Therian. Maybe not the top tier pick, but certainly a very good one, especially with that Tera Captain denotation on there. One of the better Tera Captains available. Following that up with the Garchomp, Primarina, Metagross, Meloetta, Glamora, Slithering, Fletchender, following up Fletchender with Raikou, of course, and a Grubbin there at the very bottom with Tera Captains Tornadus Therian, Garchomp, Metagross, Glamora, and Slitherwing. Very interesting one here. Yes, went for just 10 months, but also the Fletchender and a Grubbin. Almost makes it feel like there are only 8 real mons to prep for, but oh boy, are those... Those are some menacing mons with some good synergies here, I suspect, Steve, but you will tell us all about that in the typings and stats, I'm sure.
Well, starting off, of course, with the average weighted stats, the team is top 3 in special attack and special defense. Notably in special attack, a lot of threats like Lamora, Primarina, even Raikou and Meloetta chipping in. A lot of very strong special attackers here. Special defense really carried by the Meloetta, but nothing has really low special defense. Of the mons that you're calling real mons, the lowest is Glamora's 81. So nothing especially frail when it comes to that. Taking a look at the range, Tornadus Therian's 121 down to Grubbin's 46, with the only speed gap being from Primarina's 60 down to Grubbin's 46. Of course, as always, kind of below 60. I'm not as worried about that speed gap. But, it is something an additional mon could have made a ladder of. If anyone's trying to, speed creep Grubbin, which I'm sure everyone is. Taking a look at typing, the team does have some concerns there. There's a single resist to Ghost and Water, making those fairly spammable moves. My team does have the best in league matchup against Flying, with top 3 against Bug, Fighting, and Poison. Bottom 3 matchups against Dark Electric, Grass, Ground, Ice, and Steel, and the worst in league matchup to Psychic and Water. So certainly some types that could be spammed into the team, and that is a little bit of a concern. But overall, I did like the pieces. The kind of overlapping of a little bit of roles to try and allow one to break for another. Fair split between physical special and the Meloetta. I'm very excited for the Meloetta and see what I'm able to do with it, especially trying to get maybe the pre-wet form involved. So some exciting things there.
Absolutely. I think it would help out a little bit to get Tera Captain denotation on there too, but maybe we'll look at that after the draft, yeah. Looking at things such as momentum, actually pretty good momentum team. U-turn from Torn, flip turn from the Primarina, U-turn from Meloetta, U-turn from Slithering, stab, by the way, Volt Switch on the Raikou. Of all those mods, it's pretty nice there. And if we're talking hazards, I mean, Glamora has to be near the top of the list when you think hazards, and hazard removal there with the Mortal Spin, able to sit down just about everything. Garchomp also very reliable hazard setter, plus Metagross can chip in there too with the Stealth Rock. So even with only a few mons covering those things, very reliable at what they do. And that's honestly what I see whenever I see this team. Very reliable at all of their roles. You definitely sacrifice some points on those couple of other mons to get some very, very good mons here that can fit together quite nicely in a few different ways here. As you mentioned, maybe a couple of spammable types in there, but you have the ability to cover those pretty well with a lot of different Tera options, a lot of different speeds and versatility of those few pieces that you do have. It's a pretty well put together team. Excited to see what you can do with it, especially with some of those top mons. The Tornadus there, and I think that's an awesome pick for a Tera Captain at the very top there. So maybe help save a couple of points that you can then use those on some of the quote-unquote mid-point mons, which ended up being pretty high there. So interesting approach to it, and we'll see how this works out. So move on to the second half of the draft. With the number 7 overall pick, the Evergrande Empoleons, the finalists from this past season, picked up the Urshifu Rapid Strike, 1 point below the single strike form, so it was picked up before the other one here in the first round by the Empoleons, followed up by Goldango and Hydreigon. That's a duo, wow. Diancie, Gouging Fire in the 5th round. What are we doing? Articuno, Farigiraf, Mudsdale, Venusaur, and Vulpix. And this is another team tied with my Bouffalant with 6 Tera Captains, each of those top 6, Urshifu, Goldango, Hydreigon, Diancie, Gouging Fire, and Articuno. Whew, those are some very good Tera Captains out there near the top, but they may lie at one or two particular issues with the team here. Steve, what do you see in the typings and stats?
So, I'll start with the positive in terms of the average weighted base stats, and that is the team is the best overall in average defense, really carried, of course, by that gouging fire at the high tiers, and, the low tiers not slouching, the Antsy, Mudstale, Articuno, all great pieces there, even the Urshifu. And top three in terms of HP, again, the Urshifu, the gouging fire, a couple of the low tier mons above 100. So, really good on the physical bulk again. But the team is bottom one in terms of speed, and you'll see that especially when we talk about the range from Hydreigon's 98 as the fastest on the team down to Mudsdale's 35. Uh, Even though they are so condensed with a highest speed of 98, which is very exploitable. There are gaps from Venusaur's 80 to Vulpix's 65 and Diance's 50 to Mudsdale's 35. A lot of the mons here that are more offensive, really packing in that 98 to 80 speed tier. Quite crowded, which can be beneficial, but that's it. We'll see. We'll see if they're able to pull it off with this overall lower top speed. Taking a look at the typing, they have a top three matchup against Bug, Fire, Ghost, and Grass. Bottom three against Ground, and bottom one against Dragon due to the presence of multiple dragons on the team. But yeah, overall, this team has a lot of power. Certainly something to look out for. And although they are low on speed, they do have some ways to get around it. Of course, Venus, that Sun Core at the end of Venusaur and Vulpix offers a Chlorophyll Sweeper, and Gouging Fire will more than likely be trying to set up Dragon Dances to mitigate its speed and go from there. So they do have some options, but regardless, speed will be crucial in the other matches, trying to figure out how to be able to go before their opponents and pick up the KOs they need to pick up with their wonderful offensive pieces.
Yeah, kind of interesting to see the little Suncore form there at the end. Not just the Vulpix and Venusaur, but that does support the Gouging Fire quite well there. Not just getting the Fire Stab powered up, but also Photosynthesis. Kind of cute there. The momentum is a little bit lacking. I see Urshifu as well as Hydreigon and Articuno able to U-turn around, but that's really not all that much, especially since those are, for the most part, some big hitters there that you'd really like to be able to stay in and hit mons. And I'm not seeing all that much in the way of removal. I see the Articuno, and I believe that's about it. Decent setting of hazards at the very least. Stealth Rock from the Hydreigon, and Diancie can do that pretty well, as can Mudsdale set up those hazards quite well. I definitely think the couple of stats that sum this up are highest defense, but also just the lowest speed. This team hits hard, it tanks hits, but there's not all that much in the way of counterplay. It's going to be, I think, a lot of reliance on those Teras to be able to open up opportunities, because it sure seems like there are a couple of very exploitable parts of this team that if you have the right game plan, that you should just be able to come in and wreck house. But I think we kind of thought that would happen to the Employons last season, and hey, don't look now. I see a little bit of trick room going on here too, with the DNC and the Farigiraf able to support things like the Mudsdale. If you think you can just Choice Scarf your team and outspeed everything and just win that way, you are sorely mistaken there as well. So a lot of interesting things the Employons can do. Do we trust them to be able to do those things, pick up on those things? Potentially. They made the finals just last season on their ability to do that. It will take potentially a little bit of creativity to get around that speed problem. But with that said, let's move on to the next pick. With the number 8 pick, Chad is back. The Seattle Steamrollers picking up the Urshifu single strike right after the rapid strike here. Following that up with Annihilate, Jirachi, Mousehold, the classic Steamrollers pick, Barrascuda, Toxtricity, Tornadus Incarnate, Salamence, Wheezing Galar, and Jumpluff, with the Tera Captains being the Urshifu, Annihilate, Jirachi, Toxtricity, and Salamence. All pretty solid Tera Captain picks there for sure. This looks like a Chad team. I'm not sure how else to describe it, but this looks like a Chad team. Steve, why don't you talk to us about these stats and typings?
Yeah, all right. So the team has the best in league average weighted attack and speed. Just some highlights for you. Their third slowest mon is Annihilate at 90. And all but 4 of their mons are base 100 or above. So that certainly explains the speed. And attack is very similar, where their third lowest attack is Wheezing Galar at 90. Man, Wheezing Galar has that much attack. But yeah, overall, both attack and speed, this team just has a lot of it. We'll certainly try and break you down on the physical side. You will need walls and walls and walls to be able to hold them off. The team, of course, does pay for that. Bottom 3 in special attack and bottom 1 in special defense. Certainly some vulnerabilities there. On the special side, really relying on the Toxtricity, maybe the Salamence, the Tornadus to do some work on the special side. Taking a look at the speed, they have a range from Bearscuta's 136 to Weezingalaar's 60. And with so many mons in the high speeds, you might think not many gaps, but no, there's a gap from Bearscuta's 136 down to Maushold / Tornadus Incarnate's 111. And then all those mons above 100 are fitting in that 111 to 100 range, so a lot of things fitting in there. And then they have gaps on the slow side, of course, from Annihilate's 90 to Toxtricity 75 to Weezingalaar's 60. Taking a look at the typing, they have a single resistance to electric. They have the best in league matchup against bug, fighting, rock, water. Top 3 matchup against dark, ground, normal, and poison. A bottom 3 matchup against fairy, flying, and psychic. And the worst in league matchup to electric. Overall, yes, this is, as you mentioned, a very Chad team. Certainly got to watch out, especially for those first 2 fighting types. If your team struggles with fighting types, this will be a difficult match with both of them trying to hit you down. Of course, having some slightly different other stabs, Dark and Ghost, but those are very similar. The 2, of course, have a little bit different roles. One of them tends to be more of a bulky setup, where the other just kind of breaks things apart, which means they're going to work fantastically well together. One opens for the other, and really excited to see what this team's able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you think that they are relatively similar at the Annihilate, able to switch in on things, power up that Rage Fist, very tough. And Jirachi as a steel type is a really nice complement to both of those as well. So that's a really solid balanced core up there at the top. It's, of course, a very Chad team because there's a ton of momentum on here. Each of those top 3 mods also have access to U-Turn. The Barraskewda with Flip Turn, the Toxtricity can Volt Switch out, the Tornadus can U-Turn out. A ton to go around there. Plenty in the way of hazards, at least enough. Annihilate and the Jirachi with Stealth Rock, as well as the Weezingalaar able to set up some T-Spikes. A couple of ways to get rid of hazards. The Weezingalaar with Defog, as well as the Maushold can tidy up, which is kind of cute there. Yeah, it's very Chad. It's very Chad team. Very fast, very strong, but relatively one-dimensional. It'll be up to being able to use things like the unique traits of the Annihilate, being able to switch the Jirachi in appropriately, being able to stay in appropriately whenever the opponent thinks that you have no choice but to switch out, and be able to take advantage of that. It's going to be a little bit tougher than it seems to be able to pilot this. It seems straightforward with just big things go boom, go fast and go boom. But there's, I think, a little bit of nuance with the team for sure. Be able to get the pieces in at the right times such that you can just click a button and say, good luck, you can't do anything about this. Urshifu is pretty much the king of that anyways, which embodies the team as a whole. So we'll see if the Steamrollers can make it work and try and make their way back to the playoffs. But for now, let's move on to the number 9 pick. With the number 9 pick, it's the Pikeville Pups, and this team's actually looking kind of nice here. The Ogerpon Hearthflame is their first round pick, followed by Corviknight, Latios, Swampert, Incineroar, Cyclizar, Rotom Frost, Glaceon, Zoror, Kasui, and Sylveon, with the Tera captains being that Ogerpon Hearthflame, Bert, and the Rotom Frost. There's a lot of actually pretty interesting things going on here with the Pikeville Pups. Actually, maybe putting together a bit of a balanced team, but we'll see what the stats and typings have to say about that. What do they say, Steve?
Well, the team does have top 3 overall in the weighted special defense. Certainly helped out by, the Latios at the top, the Sylveon in the middle, and, overall nothing being especially frail outside of the Zoroark. Going on, though, they do have bottom 3 in terms of HP and defense. A little bit weaker on that side. Certainly will need some help there. The speed, they have a range from Cyclizar's 121 at the top down to Swampert / Incineroar / Sylveon's 60 at the bottom. They do have a gap from their 110 speed tier, where they have Ogerpon, Hearthflame, Latios, and Zoror Kasui, down to Rotom Frost 86, down to Corviknight 67. As you can tell by the little bit of slashes in all those speeds, they do have a little bit of speed clumping. 3 mons at 110, 3 mons at 60. Will make some easier times to outspeed certain threats and outspeed a lot of the team in the process. But overall, interesting there. In terms of the typing, they do have a single resist to rock with numerous weaknesses, so that'll be something the team will need to watch out for. They do have the best in-league matchup against electric, ghost, and ground. Top 3 in-league matchup against flying. Bottom 3 matchup against dragon. And worst in-league matchup against dark and rock. Very interesting with the team also is a lot of duplicate types. Of course, you have the dual fire types with Ogerpon and Incineroar, the dual dragon types with Latios and the Cyclizar, the dual ice types with the Rotom and Glaceon. It'll be interesting to see how these dual types end up working out. We already covered, of course, the matchups, but that certainly won't be all, especially once terrestrialization comes into effect. What are your thoughts on the team, Nate?
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. Maybe the first thing that stood out to me is all 10 of these mods have a way to help out with momentum. Yeah, we've got U-turn, flip turn, U-turn or parting shot, U-turn, volt switch, baton pass, U-turn and baton pass from those evolutions there at the bottom. So a lot of ways to pivot around and hopefully do some damage along the way there too, which could be pretty nice there. The hazard game is okay. There aren't all that many options for them, but the options that they do have are pretty reliable. Bert is a champion pick getting up rocks there. Cyclozar and Corviknight are pros at getting rid of hazards, so that's pretty nice there too. Uh, but overall, this sure does seem pretty straightforward and potentially one-dimensional of a team for my liking at least. There's a little bit of room for creativity, but as you mentioned, there's a lot of speed clumping in there, a lot of overlap in types, which I think could make the answers to this team relatively straightforward as well. You have a little bit of cool synergy and pieces here going on. Say the Corviknight and its weaknesses are resisted by both Latios and Swampert, but it may only take a mon that has 2 or 3 moves of coverage to be able to cover all of that together. And if you just punch 1 or 2 holes in it, I could see the whole thing falling apart. So it's a little tough there. But there are a couple ones that could just kind of steal games on their own. Ogerpon Hearthflame absolutely can. You can't find a way through Corviknight, good luck. Zoro Kasui finds a surprise kill here or there. Could be really neat there too. So definitely some things to play with here, but it may be a little bit tough to get this team going all the way. Let's move on to the next pick. With the 10th pick of the Season 18 Wooper Club League draft, welcome back to our champion, Wooper Boopers. First-time champions as they took down the Season 17 crown. And their pick in the first round was Enamorous Incarnate, followed up by the Iron Tread, Sneasler, Deoxys Defense, Samurai Hisui, Rotom Heat, Decidueye, Sableye, Luxray, and Komala, with the Tera captains being Enamorous Eye, that's powerful, Iron Tread, Sneasler, that's powerful, and Rotom Heat. A lot of us going for Rotom Tera captains here. We mentioned before that the Steamlords was definitely a Chad team, and Steve, this Boopers team sure seems pretty familiar to me. This sure looks like just about any Boopers team, maybe with even a couple improvements in here. So what do the stats and typing say?
Starting off at the average weighted base stats, top 3 in terms of defense and speed. Defensive, of course, very much helped by the Deoxys and Iron Treads, especially helping out there. And on the speed, Sneasler, Enamorous, Iron Treads certainly do help, especially those all being those upper tier mons. The team is the worst in league in terms of HP. Nothing at or above 100. A couple mons at 90, but mons that tending to be on the frailer side, at least in total bulk, could be a little bit of a weakness of the team. Taking a look at the speed, there's a range from Sneasler's 120 down to Sableye's 50. Of course, Sableye with Prankster, that 50 doesn't matter too much. There are some gaps between Enamorous Incarnate and Iron Tread's 106 to Deoxys Defense's 90, right around base 100. A little bit of an unfortunate gap to miss, as well as Samurai Hisui's 85 to Decidueye / Luxray 70, and Kamala's 65 down to Sableye's 50. So a little bit of clumping in some certain ranges, but nothing too bad. The gaps are fairly narrow. Only one I'm particularly concerned with is, of course, around base 100. Unfortunate that you're missing it. The mons that are being able to be boosting speed, avoid speed boosting are around 104, 105 ish. So not a ton of mons there. So probably not too big of an issue. Taking a look at the typing, they have the best in-league matchup against Dragon, top 3 against Dark, Fairy, Fighting, Flying, Ice, Rock, Steel. Lots of common attacking types there that they are able to wall effectively. And bottom 3 in the league matchup against Ghost and Water. So only a couple types that are as spammable into the team. But yeah, you mentioned, very much is a Wooper Booper team. And a lot of these mons we've seen in the last single seasons, of course. We were just talking about it. Enamorous and Sneasler both being on the teams. Fred certainly seems like a mon that fits with them. Samurai Hisui as well. Really a nice top there, able to set hazards, keep hazards off their side. And when the time is right, the Tera Stellar Enamorous comes out and sweeps. Or the Sneasler. I know the Enamorous was a feature of theirs in the last single season. Maybe Sneasler will get a couple more instances this time around.
Absolutely. And you mentioned those hazards. The hazard play is definitely strong here. A couple of very, very good, reliable spikers there in the Deoxys and the Samurai Hisui, able to do so while attacking. And, of course, a couple of very good, reliable rapid spinners. Say what you will about Kamala, can rapid spin effectively, but Iron Treads, of course, can do that just about every time it comes as well, which is real nice. And potentially a defog from the Decidueye, but with spikes you're trying to stack up. Maybe that's just the goal there, too. And a lot of momentum on this team for sure as well. I see a ton of Volt Switch, U-turn, turn, a flip turn there. I even see a teleport there coming from the Deoxys that can come in to tank with just about any attack. That Deoxys sure seems to be a nice little glue piece here too, actually. As you mentioned, it's not that bulky of a team there, but there are a ton of resistances. So about the only piece you can throw in front of just about anything is that Deoxys, which can tank 1 or 2 hits, set up spikes, or teleport out, and be able to reposition the boopers very effectively as well. Otherwise, it may take a couple of risky switch-ins, which I know the boopers are actually pretty darn good at doing as well, to be able to maneuver around a little bit, to be able to get themselves into position for that KO, or just wear down your team with spikes, because if they're able to move around that much and you try to keep up with them, good luck with all those hazards in the way there. Very much a boopers coded team. This screams out boopers to me. A lot of their pivoting, a lot of their offensive options, a lot of the utility that they have, a lot of the ability to go into a couple of different mons on predicted resisted hits, trying to force you to play their game. That's what the boopers do. That's what they did very well all throughout last season, in which they won. We'll see if they can do it again here. We still have a couple more teams to go through. Let's head on to the next pick. With the 11th pick, welcome back to the Kanto Kinglers, coming back for this single season, starting off their draft very strong with Iron Valiant and Chi Yu. Oh boy. Followed up with Latias, Rillaboom, Torkoal, Walking Wake, Hatterene, and then Bronzor, Zorua, and Voltorb Hisui, which still only gave them enough points to be able to Tera Captain the Iron Valiant and the Chi Yu. Wow, Steve, this is we've seen a couple of teams with a pretty spread distribution among their 10 mons, but Bronzor, Zorua, and Voltorb there at the bottom there, and once again a team that just screams Kinglers. So what does this all add up to whenever we look at stats and typings?
Well, of course, as I'm doing these weighted stats, those 1-point mons that were picked here certainly aren't going to affect things too much. So really emphasizing on just the top 7. Overall, team is best in league in special attack. Certainly helped out by just everything, really. The Iron Valiant, the Chi Yu, the Latias, the Walking Wake, the Hat, all sorts of mons here providing a ton of special offense. On top of course, Chi Yu's Beads of Ruin. Team is also top 3 in terms of defense. Really helped out by the Torkoal there, and then all the high tiers just being 90 or 80 defense really help keep that average quite high. They do have some downside though. Team is in bottom 3 in terms of their average attack, HP, and speed. So some concerns there. The speed could become a benefit though with Trick Room. They do have Hat as a very popular setter of that, and Torkoal is a great abuser. So we'll see if they're able to do anything with that. Overall, in their speed, their range is from Iron Valiant's 116 at the top to Torkoal's 20 at the bottom. There are, of course, some speed gaps on this team from Chi Yu / Voltorb Hisui's 100 down to Rillaboom's 85 to Zorua's 65 to Hatterene's 29. Gaps all the way from 100 to 29. Some options there to get some speed creeping. Not so worried about the gap between Zorua and Hatterene, but those other ones could matter. And yeah, overall, in terms of the speed, Iron Valiant being the fastest 116, would really love to see something a little bit faster than that. But, we'll see if they're able to make it work. Taking a look at the typing, the team does have a single resist to flying, normal, and poison. And the single resist for all those is, in fact, Bronzor. So if you're discounting that, they don't have any resist to those types, something they'll certainly have to keep an eye on. They do have the best in-league matchup against Dark, Fire, and Grass. Top 3 in the league matchup against Dragon, Psychic, and Water. But, with Bronzor being their only resist to certain types, they do have the worst in-league matchup against Bug, Fairy, Flying, Ghost, Normal, and Poison. Certainly a team that will be very relatively easy to exploit with certain types, and it'll be interesting to see what they're able to do with that, especially with the Tera on their top 2 mons. But yeah, as you mentioned, very much a Kinglers team. Went for that Sun mode in the end, grabbing Torkoal, when at the moment I wasn't entirely sure what the Sun team was, and then Walking Wake, of course, makes it make more sense. You, of course, can benefit from the Sun, but certainly not the the best team to abuse the Sun. But, of course, the Kinglers have to have it. Certainly some threats there. And, interesting to see if those bottom tiers are able to put in work. Bronzor, Zorua, Voltorb, Hisui, are they all just come in a one match together and never to come again? Or are they going to make sporadic appearances throughout the season and make people second guess whether or not they need to prep for them? Only time will tell.
I still can't get over getting to hear Chi Yu / Voltorb Hisui as having the same speed tier, the same anything, but in the same sentence is still very funny. Yeah, there's not much the way of pivoting here. There's a little bit with a couple of flip turns and a U-turn from Rillaboom. Not much in terms of hazard removal. You got the Rapid Spin from Torkoal, which is pretty reliable, and the Magic Bounce Hatterene is nice. But where the hazard is coming from, good question. Not much the way there. This is a very straightforward team. It does about the same thing that just about every Kinglers team does. And if you have the couple of checks in place, it'll be tough to both break down the checks and then also win after that with the pieces that are available. There's some fun stuff here for sure, but I'm not sure it comes together into a much of a winning team. It will take a lot for sure to make this work, but honestly, we've seen the Kinglers put together some miraculous things in the past 3 gym defense wins. Don't forget that. We all remember when the Kinglers were the best gym defense team for a little bit there. They could potentially make some magic happen with some of these mons here, but I'm not exactly counting on it. I'm here to see Chiyu nuke a couple of things. At the very least, I want to see Chiyu nuke a couple of things in the sun and have it be very, very funny. But with that, we only have one more team left. Let's take a look at them. And with the 12th and final pick in the Wooper Club League Season 18 draft, the Boulder Boulders are back and ready for some action as their wheel pick involved Slowking Galar and Iron Bundle as the 12th and 13th picks, followed up by Sandy Shocks there, Cinderace, Ogrepon, Teal Mask, Tinkaton, Braviary, Umbreon, Sinistcha, and Gabite, with the Tera Commons being Iron Bundle, Andy Shocks, Ogrepon, and Sinistcha there. There's some very interesting pieces here. A couple that I would say are definitely very bold doors we've seen in the second half of the draft here. But there's maybe a little bit of predictability in here too. But we'll see what that looks like a little bit later. And for now, tell us, Steve, about the typings and stats of this team.
Starting off in terms of the weighted average stats, the team does have the lowest average attack. Certainly not helped by some of their top tier mons, especially Slowking and Iron Bundle being on the lower side. But after that, they don't really have anything especially strong. Braviary as a low tier having the highest at 123, Ogrepon's 120, Cinderace is 116. Nothing especially helpful there, so a little bit frail on that side. Going on then to the speed, they have a fantastic range from Iron Bundle's 136 at the top to Slowking Galar's 30. Overall, fantastic there. And we're going to follow that up with another fantastic news in terms of the gaps. Those gaps underneath their Iron Bundle goes quite well down. Only gap is, of course, Umbreon 65 to Slowking Galar's 30, which, again, that's kind of expected. You're going to have a gap with that wide of a range. Taking a look at the typing, the team does have a single resist to Dark, the best in league matchup against Fairy, top 3 matchup against Ice, bottom 3 matchups against Bug, Dark, Fighting, Fire, and Ghost, and the worst in league matchup against Ground. But overall, some very interesting pieces. Excited to see how the team's able to work out. Very much looking forward to those top tiers, especially the Iron Bundle, Cinderace, Ogrepon. Honestly, all the top offensive mons doing their pieces, especially pivoting into the Slowking Galar and seeing what they're able to make use of that.
As you mentioned, a lot of pivoting going on here. That really does seem like the story. The flip turn bundle, the volt switch shocks, the U-turn Cinder, and Ogrepon. All of those are going to hurt quite a bit. Of course, Slowking able to chill a reception out as well into the Iron Bundle and make that thing actually a physical tank. You've seen that thing's defense stat. Very funny. And Tinkaton, while not having a pivoting move, boy, that is a unique typing that lets it come in as often, basically, as it would like. Hazard game is decent as well. The Ogrepon and Sandy Shocks as offensive spikers, plus the Stealth Rock from the Tinkaton there is really nice. Just not much in the way of hazard removal. You have to be aware of court change at all times with the Cinderace, and of course Defog with the Braviary. Another interesting part of the team, I think, is low-key some really nice Tera Captains. I absolutely adore Sinistcha as a Tera Captain. That thing can set up in your face, Strength Sap back up to full, be able to Calm Mind up. Really good weakness policy user as well. Ogrepon with the speed boost that I can get from Terraing is really nice there too. Iron Bundle, maybe not having to rely on the Hydro Pump is really neat. Sandy Shocks always feels like it's missing just that one bit of coverage that I can get with Tera, so some really neat options there. Just a little worried about maybe some of those top options doing about the same thing there. A lot of just pivoting around. Yes, you can get people caught in that cyclone, but is there something else that they're able to do there if something comes in gets the jump on you with that momentum, maybe even slower momentum to be able to catch you out of position? How will you be able to recover if you end up being able to break through the Tinkaton or the Glowking? How will you get back on track? Not 100% sure on that because it doesn't look like those are some of the bulkier pieces that will be remaining if one of those goes down. But I think the Boulders have a good amount that they can do with this team. It looks really fun. So I'm excited to see if maybe they can finally break out of this little slump they've been in and make the playoffs. With that, that's going to be the end of the draft. We're going to take a look ahead to week 1. I'm telling you, the Boulders and the Psyducks look really good. So anyways, we're going to go on to week 1 here. Here's the schedule for the first week of the season. Steve, we have to play every freaking season, it seems like. But week 1, that's a new one, yeah?
Yeah, week one, it'll be great. Certainly a marquee matchup of the season. Certainly something to look forward to, especially week one. There are tons of other good ones. As we go through every week this season, there's going to be good matches every week, just with the density of and how close all these players are in skill level. But some matches very excited for the Noctowls and the Incineroar. Noctowls keep doing fantastic things, and the Incineroar are a team that might have a positive matchup against them. It seems. So we'll see if how that is able to go. Last season's champ, the Wooper Boopers, going up against the Akron Agrons. We'll see if the Agrons are able to get a nice, powerful stamp to start off their season, or if the Boopers will continue their dominant ways from last season.
Absolutely, and the runner-up to last season, well, the Empoleons and the Boulders both really need to get off to fast starts here. They both had some very key wins at the end of the season. The Empoleons, of course, with their playoff victories, but the Boulders with a couple of really clutch wins in weeks 6 and 7, only to choke it away in week 8. Both of them really coming off of highs before a crushing loss. The Boulders in week 8 and the Empoleons in the finals. Let's see how both of them can turn things around. And boy, I'm excited for our matchup again. Every single one of ours seems to be a banger, seems to be 1-0 or 2-0, whether they're that close or not. Everything seems to be just so close between you and I. One has to start 0-1, which is absolutely a shame. That's going to do it for us. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown of the draft for Season 18. As you can tell, 11 of the 12 teams chose to take 10 Mons instead of 11, which is kind of interesting to see if the Noctowls are able to make us regret our choices with their 11th Mon and making us pay for that. Interesting Tera system that we've got going on that we're trying out here. See if everything can come together for another successful season. The competition level is high as always, so we're really looking forward to all this. Thanks for joining with me. Thanks for joining me, Steve, as always, for helping me out here with the draft breakdown, looking at some very important stats here. Hopefully be able to help reach out to the coaches as well and help them to improve their teams with some of the feedback that we had there. With that all done, we're going to see you later on. We've got power rankings all season long. We'll see you back here to recap week 1 and tell you who we think the best teams are coming out of the first week of play.